continuing the lesson in counsel to family and relatives. And we have reached zakat. The author says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, as far as zakat, it is one of the pillars of Islam. Whoever refuses it has disbelieved. If they deny zakat, reject its obligation. It is required only for camels, cows, livestock, gold, silver, trade assets, and on the condition of the minimum amount, nisab, and the passing of a full lunar year, except the passing of a full year is not a condition in the case of what is extracted from mines and treasure. It is an obligation to give zakat on dates, grapes, grains that are used and stored as foodstuffs. If they are 100 kahuls, according to the Sharia, mud measurement, the amount owed is 1/10. If it is irrigated without cost, if it is irrigated with cost, then half of that, 5% is owed. He gives it out of to any eligible recipients from the 8 categories with the intention of zakat. The intention is formed after he has already separated the amount owed from the rest and before giving it away. Zakat al-Fitr is an obligation, and it is 4 muds worth of staple food, food of the land. One gives it away on behalf of himself and all those he cares for. This is if he has excess wealth after taking into consideration his food for the night before and the day of Eid. The night before should be corrected. It's the day of Eid and the following night. His Al-Habib Omar is beginning to comment, and he praised Allah who clarified the Sharia on the tongue of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and those who travel upon their way openly, following him openly and secretly, and also may prayers be upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his companions, his family, those who follow them, and upon the angels and Allah's righteous servants, and may these prayers be upon us with them and among them by Allah's mercy. And he said, the Shaykh, may Allah have mercy upon him, is continuing to discuss with us the integrals of Al-Islam, and he has mentioned the obligations, conditions, and sunnahs of the prayer, and avoiding the things that nullify the prayer. And he has mentioned that this is a pillar of the pillars of the religion. Someone who denies it is a disbeliever. And similarly, that is the case of zakat and fasting. These are pillars undeniably known to be from the religion. Someone who rejects them departs from the religion, and we seek refuge in Allah from that. And zakat, in language, it means growth and purification. It is a cause of growth and purification for the souls, and a cause of blessing and wealth. And zakat, that is an obligation in the Sharia of Allah, and this is one of the pillars of Islam. It is, zakat can be categorized in 2 ways: the zakat upon wealth and the zakat upon persons. And the zakat upon wealth is for specific wealth that the sacred law has established, and from them are types of livestock, which are camels, cattle, and goats and sheep. And there is a minimum zakatable amount. It is nisab, and in 5 camels, 30 cows, and 40 sheep and goats. And similarly, in zakat upon trade goods, anything that you're doing trade in, whether you're trading in building materials or anything, even in earth, anything that you're flipping property in order to gain profit, zakat will be due upon it after the passing of a lunar year and reaching the minimum zakatable amount, except for treasure troves and mined gold and silver. Treasure troves have the condition that it be from the pre-Islamic times, whether they are gold and silver. The first one who owns that land in Al-Islam, whatever treasure that was buried pre-Islamically there belongs to him, and they owe zakat immediately upon it without the passing of a lunar year. As soon as they find that treasure of gold or silver, which is and in Arabic that is rikaz, those things that were buried from pre-Islamic times of gold and silver, zakat is paid a fifth of that, a fifth immediately. As for gold, silver, and trade goods, a quarter of a tenth, which is 2.5%, is the zakatable amount, the amount of zakat upon those. Again, 2.5%, and that is a quarter of a tenth. So a tenth of 100 is 10, right? And a quarter of that is 2.5. So $2.50 on the 100, or whatever currency. This is the obligation upon gold, silver, and trade assets. He said, as for treasure troves, and a fifth of it is immediately obligatory. And the first one who owned that land in Al-Islam, they will own 4/5 of that and pay a fifth as zakat. As for mined gold and silver, it's things that are extracted from the earth with difficulty. That's what he means by mined gold and silver. So after those are mined and the gold is separated from other types of ore, then a quarter of a tenth is due upon it, without, again, the passing of the lunar of the year. So there's no lunar year. The passing of a lunar year is not a condition upon mined gold and silver or treasure troves. As soon as they acquire it, they must pay it. A fifth is paid upon treasure troves, and a quarter of a tenth, 2.5%, is paid upon mined gold and silver, just like other gold and silver. As for camels, cows, and goats and sheep, each of them has their own obligatory. After 5 camels, you pay 1 goat. After 10, 2. After 20, 4 goats, and so on. And then after that, you begin to pay the zakat in camels. At 36, you pay a camel. And then similarly, in cattle, at 25 cattle, you pay no, excuse me. He said after 25 camels, you pay a yearling female, camel, up to 36. And then another type of camel. And then these minimum amounts are, as the book and the Sunnah and the caliphs clarified. In 30 cows, a yearling cow is paid. And similarly, goats and sheep, at 40, one pays 1, and up to 121, you pay 2, and at 201, you pay 3. And then in every 101, so when it gets 400, 4 goats or sheep, and similarly. And he said, and zakat is due upon dates, grapes, and grains. And he said, of crops, zakat is due upon that which is considered a staple by agreement, and that's by agreement among the schools. Other than that, Hanafis made zakat obligatory upon other crops, not just dates and grapes and grains. And zakat is paid upon dates, grapes, and grains that are eaten by choice, not in absolute necessity. Anything that is used as a staple, and that is wheat, barley, rice, anything that's used as a staple, zakat is paid in that. And when it reaches the minimum zakatable amount, what is harvested equals the minimum zakatable amount. That's the majority of scholars. And the Hanafis differ. Any amount the Hanafis say when it is harvested, zakat is due upon. and that is either a tenth or a quarter of the tenth. And then he mentioned 100 kahuls. That was a specific amount that was known in Hadramaut, and that is 12 muds from the mud of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that's 3 asa. So 3 saws is a kahul. So if it reaches what's called 5 ausuk, and the Prophet ﷺ says no charity is due upon less than 5 ausuk, and so the imams, the Shafi and other imams, they said there was a minimum zakatable amount. The Hanafi said there was not. How much does he pay? He pays either a tenth or half of a tenth. If it's irrigated with cost, difficulty, it is 5% owed. If it is irrigated by rain or natural irrigation, floods and so on, then a tenth is due. So a tenth, if it is irrigated without cost, or otherwise half of a tenth, which is 5%. And you pay that to those who are present of the 8 categories that are mentioned in the verse of Surah Tawbah, Innama sadaqat lil fuqara, the verse that begins, charity is only for the poor, the needy, and so on, to the end of those 8 categories that are mentioned in Surah Tawbah. Allah mentioned them, subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah has prescribed in the wealth of those who are wealthy, in the property of those who are wealthy, what would suffice the poor among them. If everyone paid their zakat, there would be no poor people among the Muslims, and that would suffice the society. However, neglect in establishing the obligation of Allah Ta'ala has caused many harms to the Muslims. And those who are stingy in spending according to Allah's command and in the way of Allah, they have had a punishment of spending great amounts more than that in the way of the shaitan and in the way of the lower selves, and wasting their money. We seek refuge in Allah Ta'ala from that. This is what relates to the zakat upon wealth. These 8 categories that are mentioned in the Quran, those who are present. If the governor takes the zakat, then he must spend it to everyone who is present in his land, his nation, of these groups, whether they be few or many. And if the owners are giving the zakat on their own, they should look at those who are present of those categories. Typically, there are those present who are poor, needy, those in debt, and those who are travelers. Those 4 are typically present in most lands: the poor, the needy, travelers, and those in debt. And zakat is distributed to them, and one should give to every zakat, even to 3 of them. To every category, even 3 of them. And if it is the governor, then he has to give it to all of those who are present of those categories. And those other categories are rare. The other 3, the remaining 4 categories, those making jihad in the way of Allah, those who have no stipend from the Muslim nation, so they aren't supported from the Beit Mal of the Muslims, so they need, in order to prepare themselves for jihad in the way of Allah Ta'ala. He said, so that is like the state of those who make jihad on their own. Those like in Gaza or other places, they have a portion of zakat. And similarly, those who are zakat workers, they are designated by the governor to collect and distribute zakat, and they have no wage. Their wage is paid and taken from the zakat and paid to them. Allah says zakat is for this, and also those whose hearts are to be reconciled. Those who recently embraced Islam, they're present in some places, and their intention is to weaken Islam and it wants to be strengthened. Zakat is given to them so that they love Islam until faith is firm in their heart. And so their hearts are won over. Their hearts are won and reconciled by zakat. And some people of knowledge, they say those are those who are close to Islam and they hope that they embrace Islam, so they're given zakat. However, most scholars said they've embraced Islam, and in the beginning of their Islam, their intention is still not strong, so it has to be strengthened and made firm. So they're given zakat so that their Islam and Iman become strong. And firrikab, those are people who are enslaved, who are purchasing their freedom through an agreement called al-mukataba. So they make an agreement with their masters for a certain amount of wealth in order to liberate themselves, emancipate themselves. Those are few in the Muslim lands, or they're absent. However, the poor, the needy, those travelers, and those in debt, those are amply available with the intention of zakat. So this is paid to them with an intention, and the intention is made after the zakat is separated. So if someone separates wealth and says and intends zakat with that, then that's sufficient. So they don't have to make the intention right at the time they hand it to the poor. That would be difficult. However, they could designate someone else in order to give it, and that is after separating it, intending it as zakat. The intention is then valid, and then that is valid as zakat. Zakat is only given to these categories. It is not permissible. It can't be given as a gift or as, so for example, you can't give it as a bonus to an employee. No, this is the right of Allah, and it's given to those who Allah has named. It must be distributed to those specific categories. This is zakat of wealth. Then what about the zakat on persons? That is zakat al-fitr. Zakat al-fitr. And that is an obligation after Ramadan has departed and Shawwal has come of every year. A person pays on his behalf and upon those he's obliged to support, of parent, wife, child. He gives zakat upon himself or herself and upon those who they are obliged to support. And it is 4 muds of the typical food, staple food in that land. And so it's given from the staple of that land or something that's even more precious. So he gives 4 muds upon himself, 4 muds on behalf of his wife, 4 muds on behalf of his child that is not yet reached puberty. If a child reaches puberty, then they are now obliged to support themselves. Typically, though, their parents are still supporting them while they're doing school, so they should give an authorization for their parent in order to give zakat, or otherwise that person who's reached puberty, they should give zakat on themselves. The intention of a parent is only valid upon a child that has not reached puberty, or someone who's unable to earn. They have no earning capability. That person, they are still supported by their father. However, if they've reached an age of puberty and they could earn, or they have some wealth of their own, then they are no longer obliged for their parent to support them. So it's good for their parents. It's excellent for them to do it. As for in zakat, they should give an authorization. They should give an authorization to the parent, or the parent should give the child their portion of zakat, and they make their own intention. So it is 4 muds from the staple food of that place. It's upon himself and everyone he's obliged to support. And the Shafis and those who agreed with them, they said they only have to support parents and children, and the spouse, the wife. So those are the ones you have to support: parents, children, and wives. He says, as for your parents, if they are in need, if you have a parent or a grandparent, you're obliged to support them. As for offspring, that they have a need and they're unable to earn themselves, they don't have wealth or earnings themselves, then you are obliged to support them. And that is a child or a grandchild, and so on. And so that's with two conditions: need, and they are unable to earn themselves. If they're able to earn, then that is a voluntary charity and a goodness to support them, though it is not an obligation. And he said, this is if this he has excess in wealth, taking into consideration his food for the night after Eid and the day of Eid. That should be corrected in the text. And also, if it's surplus of his debt, his suitable housing and clothing. So if he has what's excess of that, of his daily food, clothing, and shelter for the day of Eid and the following night, and that is at the end of Ramadan, at the sunset at the end of Ramadan. He said, when is it obligatory? On Eid by agreement, and close to Eid by a day or night, a day or 2 days. Most scholars say that's when it becomes obligatory. The Shafi'is say it's permissible to pay from the beginning of Ramadan. You can give zakat early, and it's because the condition is that they're alive for a portion of Ramadan and a portion of Shawwal. He said, as for the night before Eid and the day of Eid, it's by agreement, it's valid with all madhabs. Or if he pays a day or two before the Eid, that's permissible with most of the fuqaha. And it is not permissible to delay zakat beyond the day of Eid. Before sunset, zakat must have reached those who are obliged to receive it. And he says, as for fasting Ramadan, it is one of the pillars of Islam. Whoever denies it has disbelieved. It is obligatory for every Muslim is of age and is sane, that is not in a menstrual cycle. They must fast. He said, disbelievers, we don't demand them to perform the works of Islam. We invite them to Iman. He said, upon a child, they are not obliged to fast prior to puberty. However, they should be ordered by their guardian if they are able to endure it. And then someone who's not sane also is not obliged. And they must be pure from menstruation and postnatal bleeding. And then also someone who is too old and they're not able to fast, that person is not obliged. Someone who's a disbeliever and they embrace Islam, they do not have to make up the missed years. However, someone who is an apostate, we seek refuge in Allah from that, and they return to Islam, they must fast what they missed during their time of apostasy. He said, as for a child, they don't have to make up anything they missed prior to puberty. And someone who is insane, there's a difference of opinion about someone who becomes sane after having previously been insane. If their insanity occurred during a specific day, they must make up that day. And there's other details mentioned about the details of makeup fast for someone who loses their sanity. And many of the scholars of the law have said if they have a state of insanity through the whole of Ramadan, they have no accountability, just like a young person who hadn't reached puberty. As for a woman who's menstruating or in postnatal bleeding, they must make up this fast. As for someone who is ill, that person who is sick and they break their fast out of an excuse of sickness, they are allowed to break their fast. If fasting would increase their illness, prolong their illness, they are able to break fast. Allah said, Ta'ala, if one of you is sick or on a journey, then they fast the same number of days. So someone who breaks their fast due to the excuse of travel or sickness, except someone who does not anticipate recovery from their illness, then that person pays an expiation, a mud, for every day that they miss their fast. And the condition For the validity of fasting is an intention. An intention, and that is due to the Prophet ﷺ, someone who does not make their fast by night has no fast. So it is obligatory to intend an obligatory fast by night and specify that it is Ramadan. So he says intention to fast and specifying, making the intention the night before. He said, as for a voluntary fast, he is allowed to make that intention between sunrise and Dhuhr prayer. And then also refraining from the time from Fajr to Maghrib from everything that breaks the fast, like deliberately induced vomit. And he says, vomiting involuntarily does not break the fast. You just have to avoid swallowing anything that had been regurgitated. He said, if someone involuntarily throws up, that does not break their fast. Someone who deliberately induced regurgitation, that breaks their fast. And then also with the masturbation and intercourse, they break the fast. And the person in the case of intercourse with their spouse, the man, he has to refrain the rest of the day, make up a day, and instead repent for that great sin and pay the greatest expiation, which is liberating a slave, fasting 2 months, or feeding 60 of the needy, and allowing anything to enter any open cavity. He said, so things entering the cavity of the body with all of the juris of Islam, that breaks the fast. As for what does not reach through the throat, all scholars say if it enters the throat, that it breaks the fast. As for Shafi'i, through any open passage, whether that be the mouth or the nose or any open passage. As for that which enters the cavity of the body, deliberately, as opposed to forgetfully, he said, with most scholars, if someone forgot, it doesn't break the fast. Some of the scholars say it does break the fast if you eat forgetfully. And the Prophet ﷺ said, someone who eats or drinks forgetfully, they should continue to fast. Allah fed them and gave them to drink. And then as for saliva, if it is mixed with blood, it is not permissible to swallow, or if it's mixed with anything else. Or if you remove saliva from your mouth and then return it to the mouth and swallow it, that invalidates the fast because it has left its natural place. As for your saliva that is pure and unmixed with anything else, that does not break the fast. However, if it's removed from its place of origin or mixed with something, or it becomes impure through blood or something like that, then it is not permissible to swallow saliva. That's the details of that point he's mentioning. May Allah make us reach Ramadan, help us in praying and fasting, and give us to ascend the highest station. May Allah accept from us and give us to be true in the realities of fasting and all worship. And he mentioned the Hajj to the sacred house. May Allah grant us to reach it. And similarly, it is one of the pillars of Islam by consensus. As for Umrah, there's a difference of opinion. Most scholars say Umrah is also an obligation like Hajj, and it is obligatory once in one's life. Others say it is a sunnah. And he says, as for Hajj, it is an obligation upon one able by an agreement of all Islamic scholars, and it is obligatory with these conditions. It's obligatory in a Muslim who reaches puberty, who possesses their reason, who is free, and who is able. Allah said it's an obligation for Allah upon humanity to make Hajj to the house, those who was able to make away, and it became obligatory in the 5th year, and another position says in the 6th year, and another position says after that. In the 5th or 6th year after the Hijrah of the Prophet ﷺ, it became an obligation. And after its obligation, the Prophet ﷺ only made the farewell pilgrimage. He didn't make it in the 6th year, and he made an Umrah, and he didn't wait for Hajj. And in the 7th year, he didn't perform Hajj. nor did he make it in the eighth year. And the eighth year was the year of the opening of Mecca. And then he returned to Medina Munawwara, and he ordered Attab bin Usaid to make make Hajj with people. And in the ninth year, he sent Sayyidina Abu Bakr to lead people in Hajj, and he sent Sayyidina Ali bin Abi Talib to teach them the rulings of Surah Al-Bara'ah, or what we know as Toba, the ninth surah, that no polytheist can come to the house, or no one can circumambulate naked. And in the 10th year, he made Hajj himself, and that was his farewell Hajj. And he made Hajj numerous times prior to leaving Mecca, prior to his receiving revelation, and afterwards. And then when he made, after his migration, he only made one Hajj. And the Sahaba called it the farewell pilgrimage, and they didn't know what it meant until after he passed, that was his bidding farewell to the Ummah. It is a pillar of the pillars of Islam. It and Umrah are obligatory once in the life for the one who's able to make a way, meaning they find provisions and transportation and the ability to go. And when one wishes to perform Hajj, it is obligatory to learn its essentials, its obligations, and forbidden things. And similarly, that is how the law is in the religion. Someone who wants to do any type of transaction or thing in the religion, they must learn the rulings of that. If they want to buy or sell or marry, things like that, they're obliged to learn the rulings associated with that, what's permissible and impermissible in that. Someone who does not learn an understanding of our religion, then they may not do commerce in our market. Sayyidina Umar said, someone who's going to do business and not learn the rulings of it, of the Sharia, they'll fall into forbidden and invalid transactions like interest. And similarly, in the protected sacred law, we must travel according to the light of the Sharia, outwardly and inwardly, and all of our transactions, we must make them valid according to the way of the pure sacred law. May Allah give us to act according to the Sharia in a way that is pleasing to Allah in all of our affairs. So then now the reader is reading again. In Al-Mujiz, he said, it states it is obligatory to be sincere for the sake of Allah in all acts of worship. Do not seek through these actions any reward from creation, praise for them, or having any fear of them. Give sincere counsel to Allah's servants, and never to deceive nor withhold any good from another Muslim. Obey the ruler in anything that is not sinful, and guide them to good if one is able to do so. Obey your parents' commands, have good manners with them in speech and action, and give to them if they are in need, and to protect one's father from intemperament. Raise one's child and accustom him to doing good and abandoning evil, and to provide for the child when he is incapable of caring for himself. You must teach your child what is obligatory and what is forbidden after coming of age, by way of nocturnal emission in the case of a boy, menstruation in the case of girls, or the child reaching 15 years of age, lunar age exactly. You should tell the child to pray and fast if he is able to. And when he reaches 7 years of age and is able to discern between right and wrong, when the child reaches 10 years of age, he should be spanked for not praying and fasting. Maintain family ties, even if just through. So Habib Omar is commenting now. He said, some people believe there's no obligations except fasting, praying, and so on. There are many obligations. So he said, from the obligations that Allah has placed upon us are pure intentions in all worship, in saying Subhanallah, in reciting Quran, maintaining ties of kinship, charity, fasting, praying, Hajj, having pure intentions, Allah. And they were not ordered except to worship Allah with pure, making the religion purely for Him. Is not the pure religion for Allah? What is the meaning of pure intentions? That we don't seek, that no recompense is sought from the creation, or any attention is shown to them, or praise of them, or fear of them. That one is pure in intention from paying attention to the creation and worships, not out of a desire for anything they have, or praise or station in their eyes, seeking a station with the creation through worship. That is turning the worship away from Allah's countenance to seeking other than Allah. That is the hidden polytheism. That is a ostentation. And the least of showing off in worship is a polytheism, not the polytheism that removes you from the religion, but seeking through worshiping Allah the praise of people, or a station in their hearts, or attaining their gifts or their support, or to alleviate harm, to protect oneself from some of their harm. If that is the aim, that person worshipped not purely for Allah, Jalla Jalaluhu Ta'ala. He sought other than Allah through worship, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So then his worship may be rejected. Surely Allah only accepts from those who have taqwa, those who seek his countenance. Allah Ta'ala said on their tongues in what they spend in his way. We give